Please note, it is at this point that the divide between the three routes begins, and if you would like to continue to the Fate route with Saber or Unlimited Blade Works route with Rin, please select the appropriate video from the description below. Otherwise, continue watching for the Heaven's Feel route with Sakura. That night, he also passes by Sakura's house, wondering if to catch a glimpse of the strange foreigner she mentioned seeing around there. Instead, he runs into an intimidating old man who wonders if Shiro is the foreigner Sakura mentioned, but Shiro clears up he is just a classmate and a friend. When he hears Shiro's last name is Illya, he softens a bit and introduces himself as Zouken, even inviting him in for a meal. He then asks if the daughter of the Einsburns is doing well, as she no doubt visits their home, but Shiro's confused. Zouken notices this and drops it, encouraging him to stay friends with his grandchildren. The following day, Shiro senses something strange around the school, but stays late to help with a task. That night, he hears a sound and goes to investigate, only to witness Archer and Lancer dueling. He's spotted during Lancer's noble phantasm, and Shiro finds himself running for his life to no avail, as Lancer catches up to him in the halls of the school and stabs him cleanly through the heart. Strangely, he doesn't die instantly, and instead, a few moments later, Rin finds him, resuscitates him, and leaves. When he wakes, he stumbles home only to learn Lancer has followed him back and now moves to kill him again. Determined to at least fight for his life, Shiro reaches for a nearby poster tube and uses his single reinforcement spell to transform it into a metallic sword-like weapon. Seeing this, Lancer mocks and toys with Shiro, during which Shiro makes it to his tool shed. On the floor of his tool shed is a magic circle left by his father Kiritsugu he's never really considered, and as he curses his impending death, a light flashes out and the 7th servant, one of the Saber class, appears and immediately reacts to save Shiro from Lancer. As Lancer backs off, Shiro sees his savior as a young girl in knight's armor. As Lancer prepares his noble phantasm to kill her, Gabolg, it pierces Saber as somehow she avoids an instant death, and in doing so identify the man's true heroic name. However, Lancer's master chooses to recall him and so he leaves. As things calm down immediately, Shiro is confused to the state of now being a master, but Saber now detects two more foes outside, jumping out to greet Rin and Archer. Ambushing them, she nearly kills Archer had Rin not intervened and sent him away. As she bears down on Rin, Shiro halts Saber and is shocked to find out Rin is involved in all this. Ordering Saber to stand down, she does so under protest, and reading the scene, Rin proposes they all go inside as it's clear Shiro has no idea what's going on. As they talk, Rin quickly learns Shiro knows close to nothing about magic at all. In return for sparing her life, she explains everything to him, including the Holy Grail War and how the Battle Royale game is won. Though, Shiro still has many questions, so she takes him to see the priest supervising the whole war. The priest Kirei seems pleasant enough, but smiles strangely when learning Shiro's last name of Illya. As he clarifies things, Rin points out the war is to determine the last servant standing, so it's not strictly necessary to kill the masters, but it usually ends up happening since the easiest way to beat a servant is to kill the master behind it. In the event a master is killed, a servant lingers until its magical energy depletes, during which they can form a new contract with a master who has lost a servant and still has at least one command spell. Thus, killing masters is more effective in that regard too. Alternatively, if a master has used all their command spells and thus loses control of their servant, they may seek sanctuary of this church for the duration of the war. Shiro objects that an evil person can get the Holy Grail easily, and Kirei says the easiest thing is to simply win himself, else another side effect of the war, like the blaze that killed Shiro's family 10 years ago, will occur again. He also mentions the Grail will choose its own master, and unworthy ones will be rejected, as he found out as he was a participant in the last Holy War himself. He says Shiro should be happy as his personal wish of becoming a hero is about to come true, and there is indeed a villain in this war that he can defeat. Regardless, Shiro decides to stay in the Holy Grail War, which has now officially begun. As they leave, Rin mentions how Kirei is her second teacher, but originally he was a senior apprentice to her under the same teacher, her father. She also mentions he's untrustworthy, hence why she didn't even tell him what class she has. Still, once they return home, she breaks off, explaining that now that he knows the rules, their enemy's starting tomorrow. Though as soon as she leaves, the small silver-haired girl from before now appears, this time with a giant of a man beside her. She recognizes Rin and introduces herself as Illya Einsburn, a family name Rin also recognizes. Wasting no time to attack two masters at once, Illya commands her servant Berserker to kill them all. Berserker's powerful but wild swings are barely parried by Saber, who is already weakened from her first two battles already. As things seem grim, Illya has no problem revealing her Berserker's true name as the legendary Greek hero Hercules. With nothing he can do, Shiro blocks Berserker's blow with his own body, a maneuver that saves Saber and shocks both Rin and Illya. As Shiro drops, dying again, Illya oddly chooses to withdraw Berserker for today and promises to kill Rin later as she leaves. The next day, he's surprised to be alive, and Rin reveals his body regenerated on its own with his magic, but Shiro protests that he doesn't know any healing magic. Rin then proposes that since her archer is still healing and Shiro is a weak master for Saber, they should form an alliance until they beat Berserker. Shiro then reflects how he recognizes the name Ainsburn from Zouken earlier, and as odd as it sounds, he doesn't wish to fight her. Seeing this, Rin accepts a partnership cannot happen and takes her leave peacefully, warning him they will be enemies next time. Elsewhere, we see the basement of the Mato house, where two men speak. Noting the hole is opening a mere 10 years after the last battle, the priest has two servants, and the servant at Ryoto Temple has summoned herself a servant. All these irregularities will likely mean the Grail summoned will be a highly flawed one. Still, they have been preparing a special tool for the last 10 years alongside the content of the Holy Grail, so they wait to use it right. A third man now enters, asking if all the masters are to be killed, and one man confirms this, noting the daughter of Tosaka will likely be the winner. After Rin leaves, Shiro suddenly recalls the wounded Saber, and when he hurries to find her, he finds her instead back to normal, wearing normal clothes. He speaks with her, establishing they are partners now in the battles ahead, and he's glad she refuses to harm innocents to gain an edge. He also asks her real name, but she politely refuses, explaining that if he knew, because he's so weak, anyone can use magic to pull the information from him. When Shiro then brings up Illya Ainsburn, Saber recognizes the name too, and is surprised Shiro doesn't. She advises he ask the priest Kirei more, though she hates dealing with him, revealing he also took part in the 4th Holy Grail War 10 years ago, and was someone Kiritsugu took seriously in the war as an enemy. She then surprises Shiro again by revealing she knew his father because she was his servant in the last Holy War too, and he lasted all the way to the final fight. With this new knowledge, Shiro is now compelled to ask Kirei more, so they travel to the church together, with Saber making sure Shiro conceals the facts he summoned her specifically. Asking Kirei about his father Kiritsugu, Kirei avoids the question, reminding Shiro he is not blood related, and it's rare someone who doesn't even know the Grail is chosen. He does think there is more to it though, as it reveals Kiritsugu came to this town for the Grail, fought in the Holy War, but at the last minute destroyed it in an attempt to end the war. Shiro finds some nobility in that, and smirking, Kirei reveals the true past of Kiritsugu Emiya. Kiritsugu was a magus unrelated to the Magic Association who was hired by the Ainsburn family, the family that's also the cause of the Holy Grail ritual to begin with, as the greatest master for his expertise in battle. They taught him about the Holy Grail, gave him power as a master, and even gave him a woman to produce a child that would also be more suited for combat. In response to their trust, Kiritsugu defeated every master in the last Holy Grail War except for Kirei with brutal and ruthless efficiency. He also did not care about collateral damage or involving innocent people, often using the enemy's friends and family as weaknesses to win, and after 5 masters were defeated, the Holy Grail appeared. After which, Kiritsugu suddenly chose to fulfill his own desire, betray the Holy Grail and the Ainsburns, and destroy the Grail, ending the war prematurely. All the unused magical energy carries over to the next war, which is partly why this one has started after only 10 years. Kirei mentions how he and Kiritsugu were always on guard of each other, and Kiritsugu was always prepared to make the minimum sacrifice to save the maximum amount of people. Chasing his own ideals in that manner, Shiro is just like his father in that anti-hero regard. To his own end, Kiritsugu sought the Grail to make his unrealistic wish of peace a reality with the power of the Grail, and tragically he betrayed himself in that regard too. Following that answer, Shiro now asks about the Ainsburns, learning now how they discovered how to create the Holy Grail and participated with the Makiri and Tosaka families to make the ritual possible, resulting in this war. In truth, the Ainsburns have been attempting to obtain the Holy Grail for over 1,000 years, and so to face the betrayal of Kiritsugu, it's little wonder why Illya Ainsburn went after Shiro first because of his family name. With nothing else to ask, Shiro and Saber return home. Seeking to get ahead in the war now, Shiro suggests they patrol town to see if they spot any signs of masters, though that night, Fujimura and Sakura visit his home per usual and are surprised by Saber's presence. Sakura is oddly uneasy the entire evening, and hearing more about the recent series of unusual events has her more nervous. After everyone eats and then goes home, Shiro and Saber begin their patrolling, and Shiro shares that he intends to avoid killing and making opposing masters use up their command spells instead to have them surrender. That night, they hear a scream and feel a wave of magical energy, and hurrying to investigate, Shiro is shocked to find Shinji and his servant sucking the life force out of a victim, and Shinji is eager to instigate a fight. Sending his servant Rider out, Saber steps in to engage and is challenged with her foe's mobility and speed, but in a single instant, Rider dashes in to attack, Saber sees it, and cleaves her in two, ending the servant and the fight instantly. As Shinji chooses to kick Rider while she's down, Saber frowns upon Shinji's treatment of his servant. At this time, Zouken steps out, disgusted in Shinji's weakness and poor attitude, though steps in to allow him to escape with his life. Saber warns Shiro Zouken is not human, but Shiro is more interested in having some of his questions answered. He learns the Mato family is a long lineage of Magi alongside the Tosakas, though their bloodline is dried out. They were originally called Makiri but changed the name when they came to this country. Shiro then asks if Sakura is also a master or Magi, and Zouken explains Magi families only have one inheritor, and with a few exceptions, one only passes magic down to the inheritor. Sakura also lacks magic circuits, else she would have been sent out for adoption as no family needs two inheritors. Lacking magic, she therefore is not their successor, and does not even know they are a family of Magi. He admits their defeat, but warns Shiro Shinji is still stubborn despite his foolishness, and may still try something. With that, Zouken takes his leave, and Shiro helps the attacked woman to Kirei for treatment. The next day when Sakura is visiting, Shiro is infuriated to spot bruises on her face from where Shinji beat her up as part of his frustration. The next day, he seeks advice from Rin on how to best protect Sakura, and she suggests simply inviting her to stay by his house since she goes over there all the time anyway. She also gives him free advice that there's also a master at Ryudo Temple attacking but not killing others indiscriminately, though for now she's just observing since Archer is still healing. That evening, he goes shopping and is surprised to be met by Illya, who snuck out and is on her own right now. To his surprise, she wants to simply talk as normal people and not as masters, and indulging her, Shiro has a pleasant time getting to know Illya. As it gets closer to night, she heads off, leaving him with the words that she likes him, but is also supposed to kill him and Kiritsugu. That night, Sakura accepts Shiro's concern and agrees to stay by his place for a week, though to much teasing and approval from Fujimura. As he prepares a room for her to stay in, his thoughts turn to how he's known her for years and how attractive she's grown recently. Unexpectedly, Sakura collapses on the floor, and Shiro notes her feverish temperature. He stays with her until she feels better, though afterwards, Shiro and Saber agree to act on Rin's tip and attack the master at Ryudo Temple next. Elsewhere at the same time, the false assassin Sasaki Kojiro is attacked and defeated by a mysterious assailant at Ryudo Temple. His body is then made a sacrifice to summon the true assassin servant into the war, and by the time Shiro arrives, they find the entire temple eerily quiet. Saber finds it awfully suspicious that such an important place is unguarded, but as they explore, they discover the dead body of Soichiro, a teacher at Shiro's school, dead. Above his body is a servant caster and the dagger Rulebreaker in her grasp, a weapon Shiro is familiar with and warns Saber not to get too close to. Caster is strangely non-responsive, insisting she did not kill her master, and turning to attack Saber, Saber strikes first and kills her in a single blow. Another victory claimed, Shiro leaves but cannot shake the feeling of being watched. Unknown to them, the mysterious assailant has already consumed the soul of Caster, and continues to consume the corpses in the temple. That night, Shiro has a lucid dream about having sex with a lustful version of Rin, but this turns into a recurring nightmare of the Great Fire he survived 10 years ago. He wakes up with a fever and cold, and Sakura spends the next day taking care of him like he does for her. He also goes out shopping and specifically meets up with Illya again in the park they sat in last time, again to talk casually, as he learns she has two maids, Sella and Lazeret, who take care of her castle more so than her. With some transformation magic, she also reveals to him the castle she lives in the forest, and Shiro overhears one of the maids mention her mission is to dress Illya in the third dress, Heaven's Feel, despite how Illya dislikes it. She then explains her family's specialty is the flow and transfer of magical power, similar to the Tosakas, though they prefer to use jewels. Back home, Rin calls to check in on Shiro, who shares how Caster and her master were defeated, and that evening, Shinji goes to Shiro's home to abuse Sakura more. Sakura talks down an enraged Shiro, though she agrees to comply to Shiro's wishes, and he leaves them alone for now. Sakura again begins to overheat and collapse, so Shiro once again tends to her and skips patrolling that night. Elsewhere at Ryudo Temple, Lancer is scouting the area now that Caster is gone, and is suddenly attacked by Assassin. Lancer is able to defend against and pressure Assassin well enough, but strange black shadow tendrils from the lake near the temple trap and ambush him, leaving him exposed to be killed by Assassin's noble phantasm and then devoured by the black shadow creature. The next day at school, Rin shares she notes Caster is still somehow sucking energy from people and inducing comas, even though Shiro and Saber definitely defeated her. She also shares this whole war is awfully suspicious, and there is something else going on they can't see yet. Until her suspicion is clear, she intends to lie low, and also extends a truce to Shiro, who accepts. She ends with telling him to wait at the Chinese restaurant outside school, and when he goes, he's surprised to see Kirei there, chomping down spicy Chinese food. The priest acknowledges Shiro's 2 wins, but points out Assassin was also at the temple the night he fought Caster, and Caster yet still lives somehow. In exchange for this information, he also asks Shiro if he's noticed anything odd, since there is something different about this Holy Grail war. Shiro points out Kirei would know Assassin was at the temple if he had a servant there, and Kirei admits his Lancer was defeated by Assassin at the temple. As he is no longer a master, he is not a threat to Shiro, so Shiro then cooperates and shares who he met with and encountered the last few days. Kirei takes great interest in the sudden and unusual activity of Zouken, mentioning the Mato family specializes in absorption magic and Zouken himself is a prominent bug user. Zouken himself has stayed alive for the last few hundred years by sucking the blood of others, but is now nearing death regardless. He has also never been a master, but it's possible he may have found a way. Since he openly despises Zouken, Kirei states he'll do his role as supervisor of this war and suppress the damage as best he can. Elsewhere, Shinji is in the basement of his house, where Zouken grows his magical insects, as he successfully resurrects and resummons the same rider servant. That night, Shiro and Saber go patrolling again, intent to finish Caster off for good this time, but instead spot Rin and Archer fighting against Zouken. He surprises them by summoning forth Caster, but it's only the body and power of Caster constructed of a reanimated corpse, not her mind or soul. Charging in sync now, Saber cuts down Caster again, making sure her body disintegrates for good this time, and Archer pursues and cuts down Zouken, who tries to flee. Moving to finish him off, Archer and everyone else pauses, as an intimidating shadowy form now makes its entrance. Even Zouken is afraid, as a shadow targets Rin and launches dark tendrils at her. Shiro pushes her out of the way and gets entangled instead. Curiously, it then suddenly just leaves as quickly as their minds touch, and Shiro is left sickened but alright for now. Archer mentions he has fought a similar monster before and openly wonders if this time he can stop it. Elsewhere, Zouken uses his magic worms to capture and devour a random passerby, using their body to host his new one as Assassin looks on. He explains he long lost his original body ages ago, and now survives literally leeching off new ones to stay alive, as his driving goal is true immortality from the Holy Grail. Back with Shiro, both he and Rin agree to do something about the ominous shadow, but lack any ideas for now. Rin thinks to investigate Zouken by searching his house directly, and leaves patrolling and keeping an eye out for the shadow to Shiro. Choosing to head back to the temple for clues, they are met by Assassin and Zouken, who now seek to end Shiro. The masters are separated from their servants, and though Assassin loses to Saber in a duel, he succeeds in trapping her. The mysterious shadow now surrounds and snares Saber, and Assassin reveals his abnormally long arms, using them in his noble phantasm to thrust his hand towards Saber's chest to tear her heart out, but the Swordmaster is able to cut off Assassin's arm before he can complete his attack. Regardless, the darkness envelops and swallows Saber, and as Shiro is cornered by Zouken, he notes his command spell suddenly fades away, proof that Saber is eliminated. As Assassin returns, Zouken leaves him to be finished off, though now Rider dashes in to save Shiro, using her speed to evade even Assassin's tricky attacks. Assassin notes she is somewhat stronger than before, as Rider hooks and hurls Assassin away easily, forcing him and Zouken to fall back for now. She returns to Shiro, explaining she was ordered to not let Shiro die, but Shiro is more distraught over losing Saber. As he returns home, he notes his wounds no longer regenerate like they used to around Saber. No longer a master, he's left to ponder his path forward, though stays committed to his previous choice to be a hero and fight, and honor the memory of Saber. In the same house, Sakura acknowledges Shiro has once again come home severely injured, and quietly notes that Saber will not be coming back despite not knowing what went on. Her thoughts stay on Shiro and shift between a quiet passion about him to fiercely overprotective to anxious about his future fighting. Elsewhere, Kirei is submitting a report to the Magic Association, noting that the amount of victims due to this mysterious presence is increasing by the day, and speaks to his new partner Gilgamesh about doing something about Zouken themselves. The next day, Shiro updates Rin on the situation and about Saber, and she notes it's awfully suspicious how Zouken waited until after Saber was dealt with to try and kill Shiro, and suspects that was a deliberate move. Shiro then mentions Zouken said Rin had some use for him still, and is likely why he is avoiding her for now, and how he personally still wishes to fight alongside Rin if possible. She agrees to help him end the war, but only under the terms he is completely obedient to her, especially in battle. He agrees to an extent, and with their new partnership, Rin offers to teach Shiro the fundamentals of magic since he doesn't know. When they go by her place, she diagnoses him while mentioning how even the ribbons she wears are magical instruments, and in the end determines his natural affinity is projection magic, or magic that creates. Meanwhile, Shinji invades Shiro's house while he's not there and kidnaps Sakura, calling back the house when Shiro arrives to challenge him to another fight, with Sakura as hostage. He invites him to the school when Rider has set up a barrier field, and orders him to come without Saber, clearly unaware of current circumstances. Rin agrees to help save Sakura as the two head to the school immediately, and Shinji holds Sakura at knife point. He gloats, mentioning how he has revealed to Sakura how he and Shiro are masters who have tried to kill each other. Too cowardly to fight on his own, he orders Rider to beat up Shiro but not kill him, and while she does so effortlessly, Shiro knows she is whispering to him on her own how Shiro can counter Shinji. Right before she is told to kill him, she fakes a decisive blow in order to allow Shiro to dash in, grab the knife from Shinji and punch him down. Rin and Archer now step in to end the fight, wounding Rider and forcing Shinji back. Shinji attempts to order Rider to fight, but again his command spell book burns up. With a sudden cry from Sakura, Rider suddenly heals up and rushes to her side, revealing to everyone that Sakura is actually her true master, as the artificial command book Shinji carried was only false ownership of her, and when it was destroyed, so too was their partnership. Rin is not surprised, as the Mato bloodline is dried up, so without a Mage in the family, a master could not be chosen among them. Shinji was given false ownership of Rider, but it's true that Rider was originally summoned to the true heir of the Mato line, Sakura, who now bears a command spell on her hand. As it turns out, Sakura used 2 of her command spells to transfer ownership to Shinji and obey him as long as he had the book. Since that cannot be done a third time, Sakura refuses to obey Shinji any longer, mad that he broke his promise to not try and kill Shiro. Shinji then causes one of Sakura's earrings to break and flees, while a strange liquid pours out of her earrings, causing her to lose control. The boundary field Shinji set up now activates and is much stronger now that Sakura is Rider's master, and begins consuming both Shiro and Rin. Archer dashes in to fight Rider and end Sakura, but the field is weakening him and strengthening her. Wishing to end things quickly, she unseals the mask hiding her eyes and unleashes her mystic gaze of petrification, paralyzing Archer immediately and revealing her identity to be the Gorgon Medusa. Shiro shields Rin from Rider's attack with his body again, and in shock, Sakura regains control and reverses her life-sucking magic as it afflicts Shiro. Taken to Kirei to heal, Shiro learns the liquid that affected Sakura earlier was poison, and to stop Rider, she attacked herself with her own magic to knock herself out. As they wait for Kirei to treat Sakura, Shiro asks about her, and Rin reveals that since the Mato bloodline was running thin, they then looked for an apprentice to pass their magic onto since Shinji was born without a magic circuit. She reminds Shiro families only choose one successor, and if there are more children, the rest are raised normally or put up for adoption. She then reveals she once had a sister a year younger than her, and relying on the pact between their families, the Matos asked to adopt Sakura, since the Tosakas chose Rin as their successor. Even though it's been 11 years, Rin and Sakura are still sisters by blood, and Sakura's power comes from her Tosaka ancestry, which is why Rin cannot allow Sakura to run rampant and will end her if she must. As Kirei finishes his treatment, he reveals the poison in her body is really tied to a worm called a crest worm, that acts as an otherwise harmless parasite that monitors its host. There is one in Sakura that has grown over the last 11 years and has entangled itself to her nerves and magic circuit, transforming her entire body as her magic crest, as painful as that is. The poison was meant to awaken the worm and have it consume her magic energy and then body, as punishment for the condition that she run away from fighting as a master. If she also loses her contract with Rider, then the worm will consume her for sure, so her only choices are fight in the war and win, die in the war, or refuse to fight and be killed by the crest worm. Now that it's been awakened, the worm will now continue consuming and Sakura will likely die in a few days. The Holy Grail is their only chance to save her, as there is no way to safely remove the worm since its long integration has even changed her eye and hair color to no longer be like they originally were. The worm is also consuming her magic energy since Sakura is now feeding her servant magic energy and it's starved for more. Worse yet, the worm can be controlled by Zouken, so there is no telling how he will use her as his puppet. Still, since Kirei hates Zouken so much, he will do his best to extract the worm and keep Sakura alive through surgery and not rely on the Grail to foil Zouken's efforts. He also advises Shiro to leave, since her strong feelings of guilt from being sexually abused and virginity taken by the Mato household weigh heavily on her, and Shiro cannot help her there. As an aside, he also points out all of the crimes Shinji committed with Rider technically fall on Sakura as her true master. He asks now if Shiro will or will not be like his father, and casts aside his desires to protect his ideal of being a hero. Outside, Archer asks the same thing of Shiro, since they both know Sakura is an enemy to be stopped, and even Archer will be putting aside his personal grudges in order to focus on the new threat. As Shiro now wanders to digest all of the new information he's learned, he rests at the park and reflects how everything awful that has happened to Sakura is Zouken's fault. Illya now approaches and cheerfully greets Shiro, saying she won't kill him tonight since he's no longer a master, and instead wants to play. She somehow already knows Saber is gone and Sakura's self-destruction, and with only Archer and Assassin to worry about, she feels confident in winning the war. He pushes her away, but sensing his despair, Illya instead stands by Shiro, saying she'll be his ally and protect him going forward as someone precious to her. With the same movement, Shiro makes up his mind to protect Sakura and heads back to the church. Within, Sakura wakes up and reflects how since the beginning, she was visiting Shiro's house in order to keep an eye on him, though it was true she admired him from afar. She was allowed by Zouken to spare killing him in the war, and to also pass on being a master to Shinji for now, but now she must own up to her actions so far. As Shiro returns, Rin is already there, ready to put Sakura out of her misery if the crest worm has not been removed, and Kirei now comes out, explaining that it took the consumption of his magic crest to do so, but he managed to remove most of the crest worm, though removing it all would require removing her heart and killing her. Unfortunately, Zouken can still turn her berserk if he wants, so with this, Rin moves to go kill Sakura, though Shiro stops her. Hearing this, Sakura flees, and before chasing her, Shiro hears Kirei state Sakura is unsavable at this point. Catching up to her before Rin, Sakura pushes him away, not wanting to face him now that he knows she's been repeatedly raped for years in her adopted family, that she's been hiding the fact she's a Magus of the Mato family, and that she's been playing dumb to Saber even when she was a master herself. Condemning herself and crying now, Shiro also feels helpless and simply embraces her, saying that he accepts that she is a bad person, but he'll still protect her, even against herself. Hand in hand, he takes her back to his house, where Rin is waiting, still intent to kill Sakura. Shiro steps in, saying she'll have to go through him first, and Rin agrees, ready to kill Shiro too. With this, Sakura now stands up, declaring she will fight Rin if she fights Shiro and will not lose as a master. With this, even Sakura backs down, saying they will have their duel later, and leaves, ending her alliance with Shiro. That night, Sakura tells Shiro Zouken tampered with her body in order for her to become a Magus of the Mato bloodline, and part of that was her feverish flashes where she would desire sex from a male Magus in order to drain their magical energy. Despite this, Shiro confesses his love for her, and accepting this, a lustful Sakura asks him to have sex. With this, Shiro satisfies not only Sakura's cravings, but also her mana depletion. The next day, Shiro has to get used to spending mornings with Rider alongside Sakura now, as they think to how to stop Zouken, get the Holy Grail, and save Sakura. There are still 4 more masters to deal with, though to defeat Zouken, Shiro suggests they team up with Illya since he is on good terms with her. Heading out on his own to the woods where the Einsberg castle is, he is surprised to run into Rin also on her way toward Illya to be on her guard against Zouken. Unknown to them, defenses around Illya's castles have warned her about an immense threat on its way to her, so much so even Berserker urges them to flee. The mysterious shadow looms closer as they run away, and she soon runs into Zouken and Assassin, who declare they are here for her body as a Holy Grail vessel. Berserker now lunges towards Assassin, and as Shiro and Rin now enter the scene, they are shocked to see a third servant, a black armored Saber, also engage in the fight to cut down Berserker. In addition, the black shadow they have encountered before is also here, entangling Berserker's movements. Zouken declares he will pull back and asks Assassin to bring back Illya's body once Berserker has been swallowed, and to make sure the shadow does not consume her by accident. 3 against 1, Berserker is at a loss, and Shiro grabs Illya as she runs towards her servant. Berserker shatters the mask of the Black Knight to reveal it truly is Saber, and Archer now leaps in to buy them a window to escape. Saber easily blows him away and is about to strike and kill Shiro when she suddenly halts her strike and steps back to be reclaimed by the shadow. Berserker is swallowed by the shadow's mud, and as they flee, Assassin now pursues them only for Archer to step in again to cover them. He easily matches and overpowers Assassin, forcing him to flee, but right when they think they are safe, the Black Shadow appears behind Rin ready to pierce and kill her. Pushing her aside, Archer saves Rin in time to get impaled and instantly defeated by the Black Shadow. It then shoots out to grab Illya from Shiro, but he blocks it with his left arm and is stunned to see his arm simply disintegrate without a trace. Surprisingly, the Shadow now pulls back and leaves on its own without warning, and arriving too late is Rider to help Shiro. Archer tells Rider he's going to transplant his left arm onto Shiro since he's dying anyway, and while normally a spirit body and human body cannot attach like this, he and Shiro are an exception without explaining further. As he passes out, Shiro notices that Archer suddenly pats Rin very gently and says goodbye in a voice strangely identical to his own. Elsewhere, Sakura wakes up after witnessing the events remotely and is sickened after seeing Shiro lose an arm, especially after just thinking she wished Shiro would just stay injured so he could safely stay home and not go out and fight. Back with Shiro, as he receives Archer's new arm, somehow Archer's experience and knowledge come flowing into him. When he wakes up, he is again in the church as Kirei has performed the surgery and Illya is safer now. The priest says this forbidden transplant would normally kill Shiro, but somehow he and Archer are flawlessly compatible. He also mentions that the arm is still one of a heroic spirit and is more akin to a weapon than an arm, and may still destroy Shiro if used recklessly as it draws magic from an inferior source. His only hope to live longer than likely 10 years is to become a strong enough Magus on his own to control the arm without the need for seals. As they now speak with Rin, Kirei declares the current war a failure, as the present masters all lack servants, and of the last 2 servants, Rider and Assassin, Zouken can still control Sakura, so he's all but one. Regardless, Rin refuses to give up and will continue to fight, and Shiro opts to take Illya back home with him despite siding with Sakura. As they go home, Rin and Illya squabble over who Shiro owes his life more to between them, and Rin states she'll also move into Shiro's place since it's essentially their new base of operations. Sakura is not pleased with the arrangements, as now Shiro is housing the heirs to the Makiri, Tosaka, and Ainsburn under his roof. They overhear more incidents of gruesome murders, but think it's unlike Zouken's usual methods, and so the Black Shadow must be working independently. As they prepare for the counterstrike against Zouken, Shiro helps Rin and Sakura improve their broken relationship as sisters. At night, Shiro continues to provide Sakura with sexual healing, and the next day, Rin helps Shiro test his usage of Archer's arm. Given Archer's power and knowledge, one weapon they need reproduced is a certain one called a conceptual weapon, able to trigger a set phenomenon and can overtake any servant, and they have one in mind that can defeat even Saber's noble phantasm. To the side, Illya's magical genius somberly acknowledges that what Shiro and Archer do is not simply projection, but manifesting a weapon that comes to mind, and to do that, Shiro will need to use Archer's arm fully in order to create the weapon they need to be Zouken, but of course, using Archer's arm at this point will surely kill Shiro. As Sakura's mental and physical condition worsens, Shiro and Rin continue their night patrols and notice that dozens of homes are all empty of all occupants with no sign of struggle. While feeling the foreboding emptiness, thoughts of Sakura flood Shiro's head uncontrollably, and unknown to them, Zouken and Assassin are nearby, watching them but more so watching the Black Shadow continue to consume to a degree now that may even be a problem for him. Still, he wishes to set the stage for Shiro to be the catalyst that causes the ruin, finding that scenario much more amusing. As they return home, Shiro is now increasingly suspicious that Sakura is somehow connected to the Black Shadow. Illya confirms Sakura has been sleeping all night, and Sakura states she's been having nightmares like usual but nothing more. That night, Shiro and Sakura make love again, and afterwards, Sakura has another nightmare. To herself, Sakura sees the perspective of the Black Shadow as it roams the night, attracts men, and devours them or anyone nearby whole. At one point tonight, it is met by Gilgamesh, a strangely intimidating man that even frightens the Black Shadow, and he speaks to Sakura through the shadow, warning her to die soon, else she'll be unable to separate herself from the shadow. He says he's surprised to find such a well-made Holy Grail, and will take it upon himself to begin the selection, killing the Black Shadow. Though to her surprise, it's Sakura herself that's being slaughtered, as she is actually the Black Shadow and is not merely an observer, and in a desperate strike she manages to surprise and swallow even Gilgamesh in shadow, consuming the heroic spirit to heal herself. As Shiro sleeps, his thoughts turn to betraying his ideal of saving everyone to now saving just one person, and wonders if he can accept that. That morning, Sakura is found collapsed outside the house, and after they take her in and put her to rest, they relax a bit before attempting to produce the gem sword they need. Rin mentions she's actually known Shiro for a longer time than he knew, as when they were younger she once spotted him trying and failing a high jump exercise, and again she spotted him at the archery club when she would keep an eye on Sakura from afar. In a way, one thing she was always envious of Shiro was his sheer determination despite the odds, and it's a mental fortitude she herself never had, as she tends to give up once she determines something to be beyond her ability. However, when mentioning Sakura, she notes that somehow, Sakura has recently endured fatal physical damage internally, and it's affecting her mental ability as well. She reminds him that if things get worse, she will kill her, though unknown to her, Sakura's shadow is overhearing everything and is relayed to Sakura in the next room. Illya now enters her room, aware that Sakura has already consumed 5 servants, as she too was made to be a vessel that collects the souls of defeated servants. That night, Assassin relays the message to Shiro that Zouken wants to talk, and going along with this, Shiro visits the old master, immediately demanding Sakura to be released. However, Zouken says he can't at this time because it's too late and Sakura is already a Holy Grail, revealing that after the last war 10 years ago, he embedded the shards of the destroyed Holy Grail into Sakura as her crest worm, and Sakura is essentially a living Holy Grail vessel. Not knowing if it would actually work, Sakura was just an experiment, though as it turns out, she is more successful than he ever expected. Shiro is furious at him using a person as a Holy Grail, but Zouken points out that the Ainsburn have done the same for this war too, in the form of Illya, which stuns Shiro. Moving on, Zouken says he wants Shiro to help him fight the Black Shadow, because at first he was guiding it along but never controlling it, but now it's unmanageable. He clarifies that the Black Shadow is the contents of the Holy Grail, more specifically, what is leaked from the other side of the gate that the Holy Grail opens up to. Moreover, he confirms the Black Shadow to be Sakura's shadow. Because it was embedded in Sakura, it took her form and her secret innermost personality, and manifested in this world. Now it has grown stronger and exerts Sakura's will. He has personally been unable to control Sakura for a while now since the shadow prevents him from getting near her and will soon take over Sakura herself. He also points out defeating him here won't help him as the war will end and the Holy Grail will activate, eliminating Sakura for sure. Since the timing to open the gate at the end of the war is short, if they can help Sakura last around 4 more days, then she can survive, but given how things are with the rampaging Dark Shadow, the best way to save everyone would be to simply kill Sakura. As he leaves, Shiro is beside himself as he swore to protect Sakura, but that means sacrificing everyone and denying his lifelong oath to save everyone. When he goes home, Illya notices something off about him. He reveals he knows she is a Holy Grail vessel, and she confirms she isn't human, but instead a homunculus designed to be both the Holy Grail and a master. Normally, as the servants are defeated, their souls will be collected by her, but there's something else functioning as the Holy Grail instead collecting the souls. All she has collected was Archer because he was right in front of her when he died, but all the rest were taken, but they both know Sakura has collected the rest. She reveals to him the closer the Grail comes to completion, the less human it becomes by necessity. While she was built and prepared for it, Sakura was not, and thus cannot be saved. That night, Shiro contemplates killing Sakura in her sleep, but decides for good to throw away his ideal of saving many and hardens himself to the commitment of saving just Sakura. Sakura catches him poised to kill her and agrees with his choice, allowing it since it would be him to end her, but he doesn't back down from his choice to save her and stands down. To the side, Sakura uses her last command spell to order Rider to protect Shiro instead of her. The next day, Rin announces they will be finishing their secret weapon and aims to defeat Zouken that night. Shiro then has the epiphany that when Kirei examined Sakura earlier and removed part of her worm, he should have known better than all of them it was part of the Grail, and goes to confront him. Meanwhile, Sakura leaves as well and has Rider prevent Rin from leaving the house after them both. She finds only Shinji is at home instead of Zouken, who attempts to rape her as he has for years, but this time her will to reject him comes out and instantly kills Shinji, though she feels nothing for it. Zouken now speaks to her from the shadows, confirming she has killed many times before, so she's used to it by now, and persuades her to give in to despair, sees Illya, and complete the Grail. Kirei admits to Shiro he indeed learned Sakura was a Holy Grail created by Zouken when he examined her, and tried as hard as he did to save her not for Sakura's sake, but to save the new darkness growing within her. Now asking what the Black Shadow actually is because he heard one answer from Zouken, Kirei confirms it to be the contents of the Grail, but more specifically, it's the power within the Grail that has been tainted and now grants wishes through evil means. It became tainted when the Ainsburns attempted to cheat during the Third Holy War, but more than that, the Holy Grail is trying to come out into the world now through Sakura, and that process is the Black Shadow. Shiro flatly asks if Sakura can be saved, and Kirei thinks there is a 50-50 chance, provided that after the Holy Grail is complete, it is used to kill the crest worm inside Sakura, and Sakura's mind is strong enough to endure the process. Kirei then notes Shiro is more like him than Kiritsugu, who fought to save many, as Shiro is now a broken person serving his own self-interests. Acknowledging this, Shiro returns home only to learn Sakura has left for her own home. Arriving there, he finds Shinji dead and Zouken declaring victory now that Sakura is embracing the shadows of her own choice. Meanwhile, Illya is by herself and thinks how foolishly Zouken believes the gate Sakura's Grail will open is the same one the Ainsburns' Grail is meant to open. At this time, Sakura comes for her but is intercepted by Rin, who predicted this move. Undeterred now and confident in her strength, Sakura now engulfs the yard with her shadow, summoning up Black Saber to suppress Rin and capturing her with her shadow tendrils. The mud quickly drains Rin of all her magical energy, and right before Sakura moves to kill her sister, Shiro dashes in to halt Sakura. However, he knows that Sakura is speaking in a different tone of voice, and her command spell tattoo is covering her whole body. She declares she'll save Shiro from his suffering by killing and absorbing him too so they'll stay together, but as she sends the shadow to swallow Shiro, Rider now steps in, saving Shiro as per Sakura's final command spell. Illya now steps up to break up the fight, knowing that as another Holy Grail, Sakura is here to consume her and become complete, and there's clearly no point in trying to resist. She surrenders herself, and mentions that if they want to open the gate properly, they'll need to get her dress from her castle, so she should give up wasting time killing anyone else. In agreement, Sakura chooses to follow along with Illya for now. As Shiro and Rin are brought to Kirei for recuperation, Rin will be out of action for the next day, so Shiro decides it's up to him to save both Illya and Sakura, and Kirei decides to come along as well. Despite their clashing personalities, they form an uneasy alliance for this final fight to prevent Zouken from winning the war. Prepared for this, Kirei provides the transportation and tosses Shiro a piercing sword called a Black Key, mentioning that Kiritsugu preferred using guns, but Shiro doesn't know how to use the submachine guns he has. The Black Key is a sacrament used by the church to fight spirits, so Shiro should be able to use it even against servants. He points out their objective is to take back Illya, as they have no way of beating Dark Sakura, and if Shiro is serious about saving her, then they need to wait until Sakura materializes the shadow separately from herself first. As they sneak into the castle, Sakura and Assassin note their presence, and while Shiro finds Illya quickly, she pushes him away, reminding him the futility of fighting Sakura. Shiro commits to saving her anyway, which makes her happy, and Kirei grabs her as they hurry to escape now. They hear the roar of Dark Berserker behind them, and though they flee at top speed from him, Assassin is there to easily catch up to them. Amazingly, despite carrying Illya and running at top speed, Kirei is able to parry one of Assassin's sneak attacks without losing a beat. He hands off Illya to Shiro and pulls out a set of black keys to engage Assassin with, though internally, he's doubtful he can win against a heroic spirit without the proper weapon. Assassin actually struggles against the priest, and right when he unleashes his noble phantasm, Kirei uses that sure kill attack against the servant, as suddenly Kirei halts the servant's movement for a moment and leaps forward towards Zouken nearby, grabbing and crushing the old man's head in a single motion, and exorcises his cursed body with a holy prayer. Meanwhile, Berserker catches up to Shiro and easily bats him aside, and seeing that Dark Berserker is literally blind and swinging madly, Shiro dashes in to save Illya, who tries uselessly to calm the giant. And Shiro succeeds in projecting the only weapon he can think of matching Berserker's weapon, his own axe sword. Archer's arm begins swelling against its seal as his copy is defeated, but he stands up, declaring he'll protect his little sister, though that statement is truer than he realizes. With nowhere left to run, he sees no choice but to release the seal on his arm, knowing Archer's power will likely kill him. Instantly, he sees a vision of Archer, and running to overcome him, knowledge and power begin to flow into him. While he cannot create the Reality Marble Unlimited Bladeworks like Archer, he can search within Unlimited Bladeworks for the Noble Phantasm best suited to kill Berserker. Reproducing the strength of his enemy as well, Shiro perfectly reproduces not only Berserker's weapon, but his ultimate technique as well, 9 lives, able to crush every vital of an enemy at once. Berserker moves to counter, but pauses when he sees Illya, allowing Shiro enough time to pierce the heart of the giant and defeat him for good, reducing the servant to dust. His victory is short-lived, as the Black Saber Alter now steps forward, congratulating Shiro on his victory and saying he'll be spared today as Sakura is calling her back. Meanwhile, Assassin observes his master fall and states he has no reason to fight Kirei now, though is curious how Kirei survived his noble phantasm. Kirei reveals his heart is actually a fake cursed one, and knew the cursed arm of assassins that swaps the heart of the victim it touches with a fake one would not work on him. He learned all this when his own servant Lancer fought and was killed by this attack. Dark Sakura now interrupts them, shrouded in shadow now, and Kirei sees and welcomes the birth of Avenger any moment now. She notes Kurei's artificial Heart of Darkness gained when he was shot in the heart by Kiritsugu in the last war, but when Gilgamesh was covered in the mud of the Grail, the contents flowed into Kirei as well, keeping him alive. She states that while Kirei is connected to Avenger, aka Angra Mayu, she is Angra Mayu, and thus can stop his heart easily. She proceeds to do so, giving Kirei only a few hours left to live, but before crushing him for good, the soul of the defeated Berserker is now absorbed by her as the Grail, staggering her in pain as her personality loses more of its grip. Back with Shiro, he makes it home with Illya, but all of a sudden events seem to flash before him far too quickly, and he realizes there are huge gaps of memory now since he left the forest. Afraid his arm's energy consumption will claim him as he sleeps and loses concentration, he looks for something sharp to hold onto while he rests, and finds the amulet left with him by Rin when she resurrected him. The next day, Rin is back, though upset at the events that took place, especially Shiro using his sealed arm, though Illya points out they have maybe half a day or more before Avenger is born. Noting their confusion, Illya explains Avenger is the 8th class of servant in the war, a violation the Einsburn summoned by breaking the rules, and what tainted the contents of the Holy Grail. She points out masters are really receptors to summon heroic spirits who in turn are used to fill the Holy Grail, and the ritual is just an attempt to create a miracle called Heaven's Feel, the third of the 5 existing sorceries, a materialized soul. Sorceries are impossible phenomenons that cannot be achieved by modern magic or people. Rin says servants are materialized souls too, and Illya corrects her, stating servants are summoned using part of the 3rd sorcery, but they aren't technically alive as part of this world, as they need to be tethered to a Magus to live. Summoning servants merely duplicates an imperfect soul, but Heaven's Feel is a spell that can take a soul, transcend it, and actually give it life. In truth, even that is just an effort to reach the origin, the goal of all major magical families, and the Einsburns have been using the Holy Grail War to collect magical energy in this land to accomplish that effort. Furthermore, there are actually 2 Holy Grails, the Grail in the land and the Grail the Einsburns prepare. The first is the Great Holy Grail, and it's a giant magic circle, while the key the Einsburns prepare is the Holy Grail. The Great Holy Grail facilitates the whole war, while the Holy Grail collects the souls of defeated heroic spirits, and once filled, acts as the reactor core for the Great Holy Grail. Once filled, the Holy Grail opens up gate to the origin, and while one cannot travel to the origin, they do gain unlimited magical energy. With this, the Einsburns set up the whole war as a cover, as they just needed enough strong souls to open the gate. Masters only exist to summon a servant, and since the presence of a master is inconvenient and useless after the servant is harvested, it's just easier to have them killed in battle. The incentive of reaching the origin, the outer dimensional realm of unlimited magic akin to the Seat of God, was enough to have people just participate on their own in this war. Bringing this to the present, the third sorcery, True Creation of Life, is about to happen as Avenger will soon be summoned, and it's a heroic spirit that can use the third sorcery. Going back, in the Second War, the Einspurns lost quickly, and as revenge, summoned the worst evil spirit they could that could kill the rest of the Masters, Angra Mainyu, the ancient Persian devil. The embodiment of human evil, he originates from the religion of Zoroastrianism, the first religion to come up with the doctrine of duality, the battle between angels and devils. Angra Mainyu was not a heroic spirit in the traditional sense, rather the sacrifice chosen to have all the world's evil forced into him so everyone else could be without sin. While revered as the source of salvation, he was also reviled as being responsible for all the world's evil, an anti-hero. Be that as it may, he was still just a human, so when the Einspurns summoned him, they found he was just a weak human and was actually defeated relatively quickly. As such, he was absorbed by the Grail, but when this happened, the Grail accepted his wish and evil into itself, becoming tainted, and since then has been growing as the black shadow they now see before them. In the last war, Kiritsugu noted the immense evil in the Grail and destroyed it, which was the right choice, as Angra Mainyu would have destroyed everyone. From that choice, both Kirei and Sakura received parts of the Grail, as Zouken somehow knew something was being created in the Grail, and thus made Sakura a master. In the end, Avenger is still a servant, and a servant cannot disobey a master. It doesn't matter if Sakura will be consumed once Avenger is born, as Zouken is planning to take over her body after with the worm bearing his soul, which is how he stayed alive for centuries. With that, their goal is clear: stop Avenger, and the simplest way is to fight Sakura. Since they know where the next Grail will be made, their destination is Ryudo Temple. In preparation, Rin lends Shiro her prized Azoth sword as a focus to help them craft the gem sword they need. Neither Shiro nor Archer has analyzed the sword they need before, so to give them that opportunity, Illya uses her magic to take his mind into her memories where she knows he can see the blade. Within, he sees Justizia Einspurn, one of the great maguses that devises the Holy Grail War alongside Zouken Bakiri and Nagato Tosaka, whose will is needed for Heaven's Feel. He spots the gem sword but finds it far too arcane for him to understand, but by overextending himself he is still able to reproduce it. Illya explains it's a demonic blade, but more specifically, a multidimensional refractory phenomenon. Lightheaded at the feet, Shiro grips the pendant in his hand, and it's noticed by Rin, who is shocked to see it, as it's the exact same as her own pendant. As they leave, Ryder steps out to stop him before he goes and kills Sakura, and Shiro stresses he is intent on saving her even still, and would ask for Ryder's help in this endeavor. After hearing his plan, she agrees, and Shiro takes the Azoth sword with him. Meanwhile, the core of Zouken still lives, and until he has his new body, cannot send magical energy to Assassin, so he orders Sakura to make a contract with Assassin before he disappears. Refusing, she instead crushes and kills Assassin in an instant, and then reaches out and grabs Zouken's worm that has embedded itself within her. As he begs for his life for the first time in 200 years, Sakura squashes him like the bug he is, ending the Magus' long life. Making their way to Ryudo Temple now, they find the hidden entrance to the cave beneath, and within stands a hostile Saber ready for them. She says Rin is the only one permitted through, and will kill anyone else, so Rin goes on ahead, and Shiro is left to cross blades against his former ally and the strongest servant. Ryder leads the attack by unleashing her Mystic Eyes to pressure and slow down Saber, but still Saber can repel Ryder's quick and darting attacks. With no chance of reaching Sakura like this, Shiro again releases his seal and initiates his plan with Ryder as the vanguard. Sensing something big, Saber prepares her noble phantasm Excalibur, as does Ryder summoning her Bellerophon, and the two clash in the cave. In that instant, Shiro projects the noble phantasm Ro-Aias, Archer's greatest shield, protecting Ryder from Excalibur and allowing her to strike true and deal a critical hit against Saber. Seizing the opportunity, Shiro then takes out the Azoth sword, and with a heavy heart and heavy hand, he drives it down into her heart, killing his first ally and steadfast partner in order to save Sakura. Meanwhile, Rin steps towards the Dark Altar, and is surprised to not see either Zouken nor Assassin there. Rather, her younger sister Sakura is there, fully engrossed in unlimited magical power. Rin unsheathes her gem sword, as Sakura confirms she has disposed of Zouken and Assassin, and soon Rin and even Shiro as well. Summoning powerful giants of darkness, Sakura is shocked to see these mighty monsters perish from a single swing of the prismatic gem sword. The true power of the sword, collecting and using mana from not only this area, but the same area in parallel worlds, clearly matches the infinite power but limited output Sakura has. Deadlocked, while they are evenly matched, the force from their fight is bringing down the cavern around them. Sakura curses her sister for being the chosen one, the smart one, the popular one, and admits her hateful jealousy, as she was discarded, physically altered, raped constantly, and used as a tool to die. Rin sees it all as a cry for help, but doesn't sympathize in the slightest. Instead, she flings the gem sword out and detonates it, flooding the room with light, and dashes in towards Sakura. Accepting this to be the end, Sakura counters desperately, though is shocked that she is instead embraced warmly by Rin, who reveals she's always kept an eye on her from a distance and wanted her to be happy. Rin then drops from Sakura's counterattack, refusing to kill her sister out of love in the end, and Sakura realizes too late her sister's true feelings for her. Back with Shiro, the Azoth sword crumbles alongside Saber disappearing, and Rider is knocked down but is in need of a little rest before she can rejoin the fight. Advancing, Shiro enters the altar room right as Rin falls to Sakura, and Sakura is in a shaken panic, unable to end herself in the shadow, now begging Shiro to kill her. Shiro is revealed to not only see Rin has succeeded in helping Sakura regain her sanity, but Rin is still barely alive and can be saved, which he shares with Sakura. Avenger, fearing the worst, attempts to lash out from the shadows at Shiro through Sakura, who can neither control the shadow nor forgive herself for her crimes so far. Undeterred, Shiro releases the seal in Archer's arm one last time, and moves into the shadows as weapons begin to harden and pierce out of his skin. He projects the best noble phantasm for the situation, Caster's Rule Breaker, which can sever all contracts, and stabs Sakura with it, punishing her to her satisfaction, and releasing her binding to Avenger. Instantly, the black command spell cloaking her disappears, and Sakura passes out, safe and finally free. However, despite being removed from its host, the Black Shadow has grown too large on its own to disappear now, as Shiro now looks to destroy Avenger, knowing the power of Excalibur can get it done as it has in the past war. Rider catches up and Shiro gives her the order to get Rin and Sakura out to safety, which she complies with. As he gets closer to Avenger's embryo, Shiro is surprised to see a dying Kirei now step out to oppose him. Kirei only has a few minutes left to live, but is determined to spend them ensuring Avenger is born. As Kirei talks, Shiro is forced to admit even to himself that himself and the priest are so similar yet opposed they truly are two sides of the same coin. Both of them on the precipice of death, they clash in a brutally simple brawl to finish things quickly, and though Kirei is the better fighter, he takes damage every time he strikes the blades erupting out of Shiro's weakening body. Elsewhere, the embers of Zouken still linger but are still hopeless, as Illya now approaches him wearing the Dress of Heaven that allows her the ability to use a limited version of the third magic Heaven's Field for a short time, and observes as the collapsing cave buries the Magus for good. Back with Shiro, Kirei's beatdown on him is a one-sided affair, but summoning the rest of his strength, Shiro begins exchanging blows with the priest. Things still look bad for Shiro, but all of a sudden, Kirei simply stops, as his time without his heart has run out, and he declares Shiro the last master and rightful winner to claim the Grail's wish before dying on his feet. As he moves to the Grail, prepared to die destroying it, Illya steps before him, stating she'll be the one to close the gate and have Shiro survive. She bids him farewell, and is glad they were siblings, even if not by blood. She also points out she is technically the older sister, so it's her duty to protect her younger brother, as she smiles back at him and sacrifices herself to close the gate while using the power of Heaven's Field to move Shiro's soul from his destroyed body and preserve it for transplanting. As the game ends, we see Rin returning to her hometown after spending 2 years in London. She visits Shiro's home, where Rider now lives normally with them. Fujimura also greets her and takes a jab that she's still single, though to herself Rin still thinks only of Shiro. Sakura now comes in, greeting her sister, and the two take time to catch up. Rin recounts how 2 years ago the Great Holy Grail was destroyed, and thus the Holy Grail War can no longer happen. Since Rin's family was assigned as supervisor to the land, she was held accountable by the Magic Association for the massive collateral damage, the death of Kirei, and the activation of an origin gate. Kirei was also responsible for the first two offensives, so she dodged those penalties, but she still got in trouble for the gate activation, and almost more so for not doing anything with it. However, during her trial, the legendary Zelrech, sorcerer of second magic and whose gem sword Rin utilized, came forth to dismiss all charges on her, and even accept new apprentices. He approves Rin's successful recreation of the gem sword and dimensional magic, and allows her to use the tools of the tower to grow her skills. Shiro finally enters the room and exchanges an overdue greeting to Rin. To herself, Rin knows the success Illya made with her third sorcery, in preserving and transcending Shiro's soul and the body they put it in from a puppet master they met. He's like a servant without the need for a master that was human as ever, especially since he exists solely in this timeline and could potentially create Archer's reality marble. Sakura herself is still a walking holy grail with the surplus of magical energy that she often gives to Shiro and sustains Rider with. Combined with Rin's duplication of second sorcery, and she knows they make quite the trio. As she moves to help them with dinner, she turns to her sister and asks if she's happy, and sincerely, Sakura replies with a yes. Fate's Stay Night has enjoyed the success of selling over 250,000 copies worldwide.